Share Radio's thought for this week is called Government Must Open, Monitor, and then Deliver Savings Accounts in order to break the cycle of deprivation. And it starts with this question on the front of the Share Foundation's invitation to an event with MPs. If you could forthwith provide 150,000 low-income young people across the United Kingdom with over £400 million at no cost to government, would you take action? A couple of weeks ago, we welcomed the introduction of Trump accounts for young people in American families, but we noted the absence of a process for government opening where family opening does not take place. In order to deal with this challenge, HMRC allocation was a key part of Gordon Brown and Ruth Kelly's Child Trust Fund design. 28.4% of accounts were opened in this way. That's for 1.74 million young people. And the proportion from low-income backgrounds was 70% higher in this segment than for family-opened accounts. This high proportion of disadvantage is why governments have to take action if they want to break the cycle of deprivation. Tony Blair's government understood that well. And Chancellor George Osborne also got the message from the Share Foundation, Barnardo's, and Action for Children when he agreed to provide junior ISAs for all young people in care for at least 1 year, the scheme which the Share Foundation has been running for the past 14 years on behalf of the Department for Education. The fact is that only government knows who are the young people threatened by the cycle of deprivation. Public bodies are the only reliable source of information, and they must therefore take action. However, there are two other major responsibilities which come with opening these accounts. They must be monitored throughout the child's journey towards adulthood, and they must be delivered when the time is right. Unfortunately, the monitoring and delivery of HMRC-allocated child trust funds did not receive the same attention as their opening. And that's why the Share Foundation estimates that there are £1.2 billion worth of these now adult-owned accounts sitting dormant with their account providers, rather than helping their young owners to achieve their potential in adult life. It's estimated that the proportion of these unclaimed accounts is 4 times higher than for family-opened child trust funds. There are now 10 HMRC-allocated account providers, and it's thought that all except NatWest are charging the maximum fee of 1.5%. That's nearly £20 million annually in fees. They speak warmly of trying to find their account owners, but in practice they do very little to achieve this, again with the exception of NatWest. As the trust settlor, HMRC should have required records to be maintained of which accounts were HMRC allocated, notwithstanding account provider mergers over the past 20 years. But they failed to do this, and they are still not giving priority to carrying out the analysis in retrospect. It was the discovery at the Share Centre which opened my eyes to the problem. Our analysis showed that 86% of these accounts were either never registered or addressee gone away. This is why the Share Foundation set up its free search facility, findctf.sharefound.org, in 2018. And so far, we've linked 139,000 applicants with about £311 million worth of accounts. In 2019, we encouraged and supported the Westminster Hall debate, led by Helen Goodman, MP. And this is what she had to say about unclaimed, low-income child trust funds.
But for those children from families on child tax credits, the worst off, struggling families in the lowest 15% of the income distribution, there is no contact information for 4 out of 10 of them. And the Share Foundation tell me that on top of that, another 40% have been contacted but have not responded. So this is something between 400 and 800,000 children with accounts valued at £1,600, a lost value of £710 million, or even £1.4 billion. This is completely disgraceful.
Therefore, the monitoring of which accounts are HMRC allocated is fundamentally important. 96% of those 139,000 applicants linked through the Share Foundation's search facility were administered by HMRC allocated account providers. This bears out our estimate that the unclaimed rate for these accounts is so much higher than for family-opened accounts. Of course, there are considerable differences in the proportion of HMRC allocated and low-income child trust funds across the country. The worst affected areas are the devolved nations, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, and the northern regions of England, including the North West. Andy Burnham, please take note. With 71% of child trust fund owners now having reached adulthood, and with half of these being aged between 21 and 23, the emphasis now needs to be placed on delivery. This is why the Share Foundation has been pushing so hard for the automatic release at 21 process for HMRC allocated accounts to be introduced over these past 2 years. They estimate that the system would immediately release £600 million worth of accounts for nearly 300,000 young people, 2/3 of which would go to low-income young people, in order to transform their lives. The Share Foundation estimates that 62.7% of all unclaimed CTFs are HMRC allocated, compared with 28.4% at issue. The automatic release process would allow 3 years for a young person to claim or manage their account, after which the majority of unclaimed accounts would be automatically delivered. After the initial catch-up, we estimate that it would release a further £250 million worth each year until 2031. Child Trust Fund account providers with HMRC allocated account owners who had reached their 21st birthday would identify these unclaimed accounts and notify HMRC of that identity, including their national insurance number. HMRC would establish whether those individuals are benefit recipients, on a company payroll, or in the student loan system, or through any other current relationship involving government receipt or payment. HMRC would then confirm that the accounts should be closed and the proceeds paid to an HMRC transfer account for onward payment as appropriate. HMRC would, if at all possible, notify the young adults of their impending receipt. And the Share Foundation has offered to manage this operation for HMRC if that would help. All identified accounts for which HMRC have no current links would be informed as such to the account provider, who would then retest on a quarterly basis going forward. At least 5 economic secretaries to the Treasury, under both Conservative and Labour administrations, have thus far refused to activate the automatic release proposal, citing legal, data and operational issues. On the legal aspects, the Share Foundation has sought legal advice and considers that automatic release is not just lawful, but is required to give effect to the various duties on the government, including not further handicapping those who are already disadvantaged. A 2-hour meeting with our barrister and 9 HM Treasury staff and lawyers took place on the 27th of March 2026. For the data issues, the fact that all child trust funds are directly referenced by the owner's national insurance number enables direct access to up-to-date knowledge of these individuals' contact information through the benefits, payroll, and student loan channels. HMRC is now using these channels to write to unclaimed account owners, so it has already accepted this use of data. In a question tabled in the House of Lords, a suggestion was made in the HMRC response that the scheme was likely to interfere with an individual's right to manage their own financial affairs. It's hard to accept this when these individuals have no knowledge of the existence of their accounts. So, where are we now? HMRC proposes to write to all unclaimed Child Trust Fund owners on reaching 21, using those up-to-date contact details. These letters are not expected to be sent until early 2027. A CTF task force has been established with account providers and the Share Foundation. Given the clear evidence both at formation, that is, lack of family action, hence the HMRC allocation, and in communications from account providers over the years, for example, the Share Centre's analysis in 2018, we don't believe that the letter-writing campaign will work for HMRC-allocated and low-income account owners. We are therefore hoping that the new administration under Andy Burnham will activate automatic release at 21 for HMRC-allocated accounts. The need for joined-up thinking to accommodate the opening, monitoring and delivery of savings accounts for young people over a time span of 20 years illustrates the challenge of implementing long-term policies with governments dependent on a maximum 5-year electoral cycle. All the biggest challenges facing humanity, including intergenerational rebalancing and climate change, are by definition long-term. That's why we need a second chamber elected on the basis of how people want to see the country and the world in 50 years' time, in order to provide long-term oversight of short-term executive decisions in the House of Commons.